Okay. Good afternoon. So this is the project between Marcus Moore and Paul Hofer. We had a third. We never were really able to get a hold of her. The only conversation we had, she basically said that she was going to run with it herself, and we could never talk to her again. We gave her our personal email and our cell phone numbers, and to get a hold of us, and it never really worked out for her. So this product is between Marcus and myself. He's making a video um, on his code, and I'm making one on my code. Now, to clarify, oops, sorry. So to clarify who's here, you're going to see three modules. The first module is all Marcus's. Second and third is mine. The third is simply a button to go back to the main page. So really, the third module means nothing. So first is Marcus's. Second is Paul Hofer's. I'll let Marcus talk to his. The only thing that I need to add into Marcus's for your essay, just in case he doesn't, it is on the close job function, which we'll get into. It has to call my data first, and the reason that it has to call my data is we have to copy all the input data points to a new sheet to then complete the analysis portion, which is within all of module 2 for myself. So how this works is the new invoice, and he's got a count over here. Again, that's his stuff. I'm going to let him talk to it. And then you're going to put in customer information that's preset. If you need a new one, you'll click on new. And then you're going to input the blind stuff that gets sold. So let's say they pleaded. We want 2 of them. And then we want bolt, and say we want 15. So down here you're gonna have this close job. So this is this function, the close job function, right? So it's gonna do all this stuff. You're gonna see it run through, and before it closes the saves the actual PDF and closes that form, it runs through and copies this data, right? All this data in here. Sorry, my Xbox is going crazy. So let's say we're done here. We're gonna hit this close job. Should work seamlessly. You really shouldn't see anything until the pop-up for the saving of the PDF. So we'll hit the save button. PDF, it gives you a little pop-up telling you the PDF has been created. So you can work from this analysis tab right here and refresh the numbers, or you can go to the main menu and click this analysis button right here. So as you can see, some of the data is already input, and there's hidden tabs in here, which I can show you, and I probably will. So you can see there's data in here. It's important to notice that there's data in here because while writing this code, when I was testing it, it already had data in it. So I was like, you know what, let me take all this data out and see what happens. And I ran into a lot of problems because the predefined, the set Excel, where we set the Excel at, basically it had data in it, so I didn't write the code properly. So what we had to do that, which I'm sure you're going to see, is a lot of if statements, really. That's the pivot table part, and I'll get into that. But so on this analysis piece, you're going to see a lot of if this stuff is not blank, then we're going to go forward. So like, for example, so if active cell isn't blank, then you're going to go ahead and offset, and you're going to sum these numbers. The reason I had to put that if this is blank, isn't blank, here we'll unhide all this stuff. So what happens when you hit that close button, it copies all this data into here. So you can see that it's all copied into here. And then the pivot table, it grabs all this data from the raw data tab and puts it in a pivot table. Now, the pivot tables are notoriously hard to manipulate and do things with. So I found it easier just to copy all that data from the pivot table and make them values in layer 1 tab, and then do some formatting real quick, removing the total columns and stuff like that. And then I did the analysis based off of this, right? And then, so here's the real part, the tricky part, is when you remove all this data, and let's say you're doing the first data point, right? Do a job here. It's only got one column in it. This is going to hide everything because the code tells it to hide it. So I'm going to have to unhide it again. I should have commented that out. That's my fault. All right, so I must have already commented it out. Okay. When you run, oops, raw data. If you run the analysis portion right now, it's going to go off of this right here. It's going to go into the pivot table, and the pivot table is only going to have one thing. So layer will only have this one thing. It'll look something like this, even though not quite, but it'll look something like this. Now the code, it'll go in here and it'll copy that first portion, and then it's not going to know what to do. So you had to set an if statement, basically saying if this is blank, it's because it's it's because of the offsetting. So using offsetting, it doesn't really know what to do. So if this, we had to set a code to say that if this portion right here, if A3 is blank, then you're really only going to deal with A2 and nothing else, is really what that code is telling it. So it should work with only having one. So if I refresh the numbers, so now you can see it was only doing one. It would it would error out all over the place because it was trying to offset, grab some stuff, and then the formatting, it would format the entire column, and this going all the way down because it only had one. So when it did the cells end function, when you did the cells end XL down, because it only had that one cell with data in it, it would function the whole way down, all the way down to 141,000 something, or is it 1,400,000 something? Anyway, it would format that whole column gray and so forth. So we had to put a lot of if statements in there. No big deal, right? Easy peasy. It was good. It's good knowledge, but gained. So that's basically it. So if we get a couple more jobs in here so that you can see how it's doing its analysis. And if this was a real thing and we wanted to grow it, there's obviously a lot of things, a lot of functions you would want to add to it, and Excel probably wouldn't be the best application to use. Doesn't matter though, it's still kind of the same mindset. So we're going to do put a couple in here. We're going to see what the analysis says real quick. All right, so you can see that these three items, right, as more orders would go through, obviously the data would start to smooth out. But you can see that these three items were ordered 50% of the time. And each time that this was ordered, the cellular shade was ordered, one of them was ordered. And then half of a vertical and 12 and a half of a mounting bracket. So Common sense would tell you can't have half of these things, so you always want to round up. Now, one of the functions that I would add into it if I was going to grow it is the round function. I just ran out of time, and I actually thought about it yesterday that the round function was probably the way to go, round up function. So what you'd want to have on hand is at least one of these, 13 of the mounting brackets, and one vertical blind. Again, as orders were to keep coming in, your data would smooth out and you would get a truer picture of what you need to have on hand. This concludes the presentation. I am in your next class right now, just so you know that the Virtual Education Center for the Air Force was down. It just came back up a couple of days ago. I tried to do a manual paperwork for the TA, and I might not have gotten it in on time. So tomorrow, if I didn't get it on time, I will drop the class. If I can get them to work with me, I'll log into the class and, make some introductions. Appreciate you having us.